Aloha champions, and welcome back to our second science video of this week for this wonderful Thursday. In our previous video, we talked about petroleum and all the uses we have for it and how it provides energy for us. However, there are other ways and other resources, non-renewable resources that we can use to power society. And so today we're talking about nuclear energy. And nuclear energy is the way that I'm 90% certain you are receiving power in your homes, because we have a large nuclear power plant located just west of the valley called the Palo Verde Nuclear Power Plant. And this nuclear power plant powers up most of Phoenix unless you've made the switch over to solar power. But let's get started in learning a little bit more about nuclear energy and the energy that powers our own homes. Okay? First off, every time I've got a science or social studies video, one of these informational texts, I always draw my attention to this big question. What do I want to know or think about as I'm watching this video? And for our big question today is we want to know, what is nuclear power? And a vocabulary term to help us understand what is nuclear power is nuclear energy. Well, nuclear energy is energy produced by the splitting of atoms or tiny particles of matter, splitting up very minuscule microscopic atoms. Here on the tip of my pen are probably thousands and millions of atoms just on the single tip of this pen, and they split up those atoms, creating energy. But let's learn a little bit more about that whole process and how we have energy delivered to our homes here in Phoenix. Okay. Nuclear energy, chapter 4. There are many types of energy that people can use to meet our energy needs. One of those is nuclear energy. Like other sources of energy, nuclear energy has its costs and its benefits. What impact it has on our environment and what benefits it has for our society. About 20% of the electricity generated in the United States is provided by nuclear energy. That electricity can provide power to many homes, businesses, schools, and other places. Whole city of Phoenix. First, you need your materials. For fossil fuels, you dig up or you mine or drill a well for oil, natural gas, or coal. But what materials are needed for releasing nuclear energy? Well, nuclear energy is generated when atoms of certain materials are split. This breaks the bonds holding the nucleus of the atom together, generating different atoms and releasing energy. The most common material to use for this process is known as uranium. But less than 1% of the uranium found on Earth is the kind that we can use for nuclear energy. Uranium is found in rock, usually mixed with other elements and even other kinds of uranium that cannot be used for nuclear reactions. Here you have an example of what uranium looks like if you were to find it in the wild, but it has to be mined and enriched. So a nuclear power plant uses a specific type of uranium that must be used to release nuclear energy, and this material is known as uranium-235. Useful nuclear energy is released from uranium-235 in a nuclear power plant. Look at the image closely to see how nuclear energy is transformed to electricity. The process is called a chain reaction that releases energy from uranium-235, takes place in the reactor core. The fuel rods control the chain reaction. The containment shell helps prevent radioactivity from leaking into the environment outside. Radioactivity can kill and damage living organisms. So here we have our reactor. It's all contained in this giant concrete structure. And in this concrete structure, you have a reactor that has control rods. And as the energy, the uranium-220 or 235 pumps through here, it pumps into the boiler. Some of that hot uranium comes off as steam, which goes through and powers turbines, spinning wheels that generate a electric generator to power electricity. Then it is cooled through a cooling system, with some of it coming back into the cycle to go back through the pump, through the reactor and the control rods to be heated up again and make more steam. I wish I planned ahead and had my dad talk a little bit more about this. My dad worked on a nuclear submarine which had a smaller nuclear power plant that powered the submarine, and he did this for like 25 years, and he sat there and made sure that the reactor was doing what it needed to do to power the submarine without overheating, exposing himself and the rest of his crew on his submarine to this. But maybe I'll see if he's kind enough to give us a few words about nuclear power and what that means here in this video or in a future video. Okay, so continuing this image, energy goes through the turbines power the generators send power through the electrical wires, and those electrical wires either go above us or underground till they get to our house to power us. Okay, and then some of this water that is cooling goes through a reservoir and goes through a cooling tower, which helps to emit the cooler or the overheating water out as steam vapor into the atmosphere. Okay. However, nuclear power does have its costs as well. Some of those costs of nuclear power. Well, there's many costs and benefits into using nuclear energy. Some of the benefits were discussed on our previous pages. One problem is that nuclear energy is non-renewable. We can't find more uranium-235. What exists on Earth is the amount that we have, and if we use it all, there will be no more. The materials that are the fuel for the nuclear reactor are rare. Also, nuclear power generates a lot of dangerous waste. Some of the material quickly breaks down into safe substances, but some remains radioactive for tens of thousands of years. This means that some materials need to be placed in sealed storage facilities that must be guarded or kept secret for centuries. We don't want anybody going and playing in nuclear waste. Despite what comic books might have told you, it's not a good way to try to become a superhero. Nuclear material has been used to make weapons in addition to generating electricity. Nuclear bombs, like we learned about at the end of Sylvie and Aki, that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, are a result of the same kind of reaction that powers up these nuclear power plants. Nuclear bombs have had devastating power. Because one nuclear weapon can do so much damage, governments have struggled to control access to nuclear materials and technology. It can be used for good, to power cities, or it can be used for bad and eliminate entire cities in the blink of an eye. A nation that claims to want nuclear technology only to provide electricity could also want to use it to develop weapons. Not everybody is truthful when they're trying to communicate with the United Nations or other governments about their intentions. Okay? So, hopefully you learned a little bit more about nuclear energy. I know it's a lot to learn. It's a huge concept, something that I myself, at 32 years old, have not asked my dad much about, but maybe we'll get a little more information with him. But with that, thank you for your time. Answer the 5 to 10 questions in Google Classroom. Stay awesome, and I will talk to you real soon.